The imbalance. The creation of this division between you and the inequality and the conception of difference when it comes to gender is a natural extension of the conception you have of the differences between you based on your bodies. There are two different body types that men and women have, and obviously they function differently in certain ways. Each kind of body does what it does naturally, and they are complementary, as you already understand. Yet you have made of the differences much ado, and you have categorized each kind of body in such a way that carries what we might call the logic of difference as far as you possibly can. The result is that you long ago on the Earth timeline decided that there was a hierarchy when it came to the two kinds of bodies. Instead of seeing that there is a complementary nature to them, you have focused on the differences between them and constructed many cultural teachings and expectations about each person based on which of the two kinds of bodies that person happens to possess. As you incarnate in a series of lifetimes, you incarnate as each gender many times. At present, you will be in one of the two kinds of bodies, yet you might identify energetically and emotionally as someone who should have had the other kind of body. You also might possess memories of what it was like when you, as another manifestation of your soul, lived a life on Earth in the other kind of body, the one you do not possess now. With the shifts you are now undergoing as consciousness evolves, it is highly likely that whatever has gone unprocessed in your various lives along the Earth timeline is now up for review. It is, in fact, high time that this happen, as you have all lived lives on Earth as each gender many times, and all of you have been dealing for a very long portion of the Earth timeline with partitioning yourselves off from goddess energy. This is precisely the sort of thing that is ready to become ripe in your soul's learning by now collecting memories from the past in your present level of consciousness and learning to work through issues that you have been working on for many lives about the gender imbalance humanity has created and has been living through. Women's and men's bodies do different things when it comes to certain parts of life. This is the basic fact. It is set up this way on Earth because it is a critical part of your learning as all that is about what it means to believe that you are separate from each other. On a fundamental physical or biological level, you understand that you are not complete within yourself. Your exploration of this over many, many lifetimes is finally to include the realization that energetically, you actually are complete within yourselves. You are a portion of all that is, that has split off temporarily so that you can learn about how that might, can, and does work in a dimension such as this one, and in bodies such as the ones you inhabit. Yet it is also true that your identification with your physical body as who you are is a major part of the learning that you set out to do. Now you have cycled through identifying as your bodies and perceiving that you are incomplete without another. You have played this out, and you have learned all that you have needed to learn through that process. You are ready now to learn that the nature of your physical bodies does not reflect the nature of who you really are. These realities about your physical bodies being complementary is in truth a function of forcing you to learn about how to be together and learn about life, yourselves, and each other as you perceive that you are separate from all that is, as you believe that you are separate. You are now remembering more about your true nature every day, and the teaching that you are separate and that you are not whole is ready to be grown out of and left behind. Many of you are in fact growing beyond it, but have been looking for something to put in its place. These teachings I am bringing through this channel in this volume and others are intended to do just that. Giving importance to the difference between your bodies has led you to give importance to difference. That your bodies are complementary serves the learning journeys of you as portions of all that is, and is therefore important. Yet when you observe the factal and functional differences between your two types of bodies, you have tended to categorize the different functions and value each differently. You have not come to value each body type for what it does naturally and is intended to do and how they can interact together in wonderful ways, but you have come to value each differently. This is a result of the masculine-based mindset that has come to dominate over the last handful of millennia. To understand this history and why you, as all that is, have chosen to create and experience it, let me begin with an exploration of the two basic types of energy. One is masculine and the other is feminine. They complement each other, and together form all there is. The natural inclination of feminine energy is to exist, to open, to feel, to actively be. The natural inclination of masculine energy is to act upon, to control, to shape, and to direct whatever is around it. It is easy to see, when it is explained in this concise way, that whenever there is a separation of the two energies, one will do what it can to control the other. You can easily see that in this schema, one aims to be and the other aims to do something about whatever it can, including the one that is aiming to be. This is a natural division of energies when it comes to living in duality, which is the lens through which you have been living for as long as there have been humans on Earth, longer, in fact. All beings have been learning through this lens along the Earth timeline for as long as you have been coming here to learn lessons as all that is having experiences on Earth. In duality, there is a learning that if someone has something, someone else does not have it. Resources appear limited through this lens, and strength appears linked to material or manifest reality. As such, it will always through duality seem that some can have strength while some cannot have it. When it comes to these two natural forms of energy, one is and the other does. They have very different priorities, and so when you are living through the lens of duality, as you are, and these two orientations to energy are identified with personality, which is to say, when they are different kinds of bodies, and those types of bodies are identified with as who you are, this level of difference can become the basis of who has the power. There in fact arises a politics of power based in gender, and that is what you are dealing with now in the form of how men and women interact and how you conceive of who men are and who women are. This is the basis for the imbalance between male and female on your planet now. That the bodies function differently is a secondary layer, though in fact very important. The fact that it is the woman's body that gestates the young before birth matters a great deal in how this has played out on your planet. Also important is the related fact that the creation of new human life takes place entirely within the body of the woman, because it is not easy to control this situation, and the masculine energy seeks to control everything. Both bodies are needed for this process, but the site of conception is always within the body of the woman. I would like you to think about this, the fact that conception of new life takes place exclusively within one of the two kinds of bodies that humans can possess. In one way of looking at it, it is a natural setup to generate issues surrounding power when it comes to sexuality and gender roles. There is always the potential of a mystery when it comes to procreation, and it cannot be controlled, but it is felt that it must be controlled. There is an urgency that a way be found to control this, and it is related to a fact I will describe for you below, which has to do with you as a species making a decision about who you are and not waiting for life to tell you who you are. The purpose of the imbalance. The imbalance that has been created surrounding the feminine is purposeful. It has been created on purpose. It serves to teach you, as portions of all that is, what it means to live lives in bodies like yours, in a time, place, and dimension like Earth. You have set out to learn what it is like to forget that you are altogether all that is, that you are a portion of divinity and whole and complete within yourself. You have set out to learn through the experience of identifying with your body, and then in time, perhaps even a very long time later, remembering that body is in fact a vehicle for your soul's experience and not who you really are. As I tell you that you are ready to remember this true nature of yours, and that you are indeed remembering, it is always important that you realize and understand why it is that you have created what you have created. Otherwise, there is no learning. If you do not understand, then there is only experiencing, and often this happens with the perception that something is happening to you and that you have no control over or input to how it works. Suffering tends to result, and sometimes, with many of you, a certain sort of defeatism can follow, because you can come to believe you have no input into how your life unfolds. You, of course, do have input into how it works, and one of my aims is to reveal to you from many different angles how and why you have created what you have thus far for yourself to live within and through. I wish to reveal to you that you have always been the divine creative being that you are. You have simply been creating a lot of confused scenarios for yourself to learn through, because you have been creating from a state of ignorance of who you are, why you are here, and what it means to be as powerful a creator as you in fact are. Looking at this imbalance when it comes to the feminine in terms of it being a creation of yours, and as part of you as a collective expressing your divine creative power as all that is, it changes things, doesn't it? The imbalance is no longer in your mind possibly the result of a divine force that does not love the feminine women, or nature and the earth itself, or you. It is no longer the apparent result of the evil or the rottenness that exists in humankind in general, or men in particular. It is no longer the result of women potentially being not as strong as men, and therefore deserving to be dominated, controlled, or abused by them. It is no longer the result of there being no justice. All of these reasons that the minds of many of you have assigned to why this imbalance has occurred are obviously products of mindsets of beings who have believed themselves to be acted upon and at the whim of external factors, including some anthropomorphized version of a god who might or might not be looking out for you, depending, of course, on how you behave. In other words, these mindsets are products of disempowered beings trying in earnest and with sincerity to make sense of the painful and imbalanced situation they are experiencing, but as it happens, through disempowered eyes. I have said it before, and I will say it many times going forward. You have believed that you are powerless because it has been a necessary module in learning about life on Earth to get to the place of remembering that you are powerful. It has all been about learning what a life as a divine being would be like if you were to forget who you are, to forget yourselves, to forget your true natures and the fact and depth of your true creative power. You have been creating this entire time from a place of ignorance of who you really are and the current imbalance in your planet, and in your minds, hearts, and bodies when it comes to the natural feminine in all of its forms as a result. Many of you are angry about this situation. You carry anger that women are belittled and abused, that the earth itself and the rest of the natural world is belittled and abused, and you are angry at other manifestations of this imbalance. You act out this anger in many ways. A purpose that I intend to serve by bringing this teaching today is to reveal to you how this anger affects your lives, so that you can move beyond it and heal the hatred that you are showering on self and other because of your pained feelings about this situation with the feminine in your history and in your lives at present. Anger is always rooted in pain, and this pain that you carry about the diminishment of the feminine is deep. It is perhaps the deepest that you as a collective carry at this time. Your relationships with the earth, your bodies, each other, and source are all affected in primary ways by it. Take the opportunity now to choose to take responsibility for what you have created and why you have done so, and you will be able to surrender that anger and no longer carry it and live through and from a hatred of God, men, history, self, or anything else toward which you have directed this anger that is rooted in your deep pain. You will no longer need to identify through anger as people who are powerless, which is the source of anger. Pain that results from feeling powerless in a given situation or dynamic. Let us continue exploring this situation in terms of the diminishment of the feminine. There are two kinds of energy, and one always seeks to give shape to, dominate, and/or control the other. The diminishment occurs when you assign value to the feminine relative to the masculine, and vice versa. You have become unsure how to live with masculine and feminine being complementary, and so it must be true. You, as a collective, have thought, that one is better than the other. You have decided that one or the other must be elevated as a model of all humanness. It is inconceivable to you that it would be the energy that just is, the one that seeks to be and feel. Nothing would get done if that energy were the model, is what you think. So it is that the model chosen is the masculine energy, and this ensures that much gets done and is controlled and fashioned with clear mental intent in the process of living. When this is the model valued most highly, there is a lot getting done, and there are very specific ideas about progress and success that center on doing and doing more, in always doing more than others, and in doing more than before. As a result of the masculine energy being elevated in what you as a collective value, those who identify personally with masculine energy because they have male bodies are those whose opinions, wishes, needs, and desires and thoughts become perceived to be the most important. I can feel some of you beginning to bristle at even these ideas. So do what you need to do to ground and stay open to reading without judgment. When we have stepped through the entirety of this exploration, you will understand why this creation of imbalance of yours has been necessary and what it has taught you. In cultural contexts in your history, those who acted became valued, and those who desired above others to act in the ways that fit with this model tended to be male. This is a practical way of looking at this, but the energetic reality behind it is that you as a collective were ready to learn what it means to create the world around you through action. You are also ready to choose parameters according to which to define yourselves, which is to say that you expressed your divine creative will in coming to defer over time to the masculine prerogative, and then the male prerogative, or that of men. When this began, it was not about men and women. It was about the energy of action and the will to take on life in an active way in order to change the world into what you desired it to be. Living in harmony with the rhythms of nature belongs to the feminine way of living, and this had been in play on your planet for a very long time. When this masculine-centered perspective developed and came to the forefront, it was in some ways a reaction to the perceived lack of action of the past. It served to stir humanity into action in new ways, and it inspired you to tap into your creative powers in important new ways. As you observe the results of this way of living now, you see that you are hurt and angered. And there is much energetic and emotional debris piled up all over the earth and in all of your hearts as a result of it. In the beginning of the history of this way of being, it was not all about the suppression, negation, and destruction that you see within and all around you now. It was in many ways and on many levels about humans finally becoming empowered to see how to do things to change your lives and take an active role in how your lives unfolded. There was no longer a waiting for nature to take care of you, tell you who you are, and set the course of your lives. So with this idea in mind, you can see how important this stage of your evolution has in fact been. At this point in the process of this situation unfolding in your lives, many of you crave to get back to nature and to align with it once again. This is, of course, good, and yet do not leave behind what you have been learning for the last 6 millennia. This period was important because you learned to motivate yourselves to create around you the sort of world you desired to see. And that, my friends, is an incredibly important step towards the empowerment as divine beings that you are headed to embodying and experiencing. Creation during what you call the patriarchy has been focused on the material side of things in creating the sort of physical and manifest world in which you desire to live. Now, as you begin to move ahead, you are tasked with remembering how to do that, and yet add in your conception of self and world, the metaphysical truth of who you are and just what it is that is going on as you live these many lives on earth all along its timeline. As always, I wish to show you the purpose of what you have created so that you can see that all that you experience is in truth for your highest good, and that there are no creations of yours that are wasteful or unnecessary along your learning journey as souls having human experiences. This situation has, in fact, been in countless ways for your highest good, and you have learned much about yourselves as divine beings through it. You have motivated yourselves to take control of how your life unfolds. You have given yourself the gift of empowerment to change things. Though, of course, it has been much about the material reality you live in. Yet what you have learned about doing and being in action will serve you well in your next phase of evolution as you choose to come back into balance. As the value of one mindset and side of energy came to be elevated over another, the difference between male and female bodies took on a new level of importance. Parts of life that involved action, assertion, and aggression, and that had to do with shaping and control took on a new importance in the collective mind and conception of self. It came to pass that when women had to offer as embodiments of the feminine were valued less, except of course when it came to those of bearing and raising children and being attractive to men, the diminishment of the feminine is really a result of the elevation of the masculine. It had to happen in order that people would begin to believe that the masculine perspective on things, self, and life was worth believing in over the other ways of being. What was considered the old way, that was seen in need of being replaced. If you had not, as a collective, decided to leap into action in this way, valuing the masculine way of thinking, seeing, and doing, you might still be waiting for your divine mother, the earth or goddess, to give you all you need. You might still be waiting to be told that you are capable of divine, willful creation. You would, in fact, be, so to speak, sitting on your hands as regards to your divine, creative power. You would be living lives of waiting to find out who you really are. Can you see how this pendulum swing has served you? I consistently seek to challenge you to see the truth of your divine creative powers and to see that the power of choice that you express literally creates the world around you. The pendulum swing that has ended up resulting in such great and deep pain among all humans when it comes to the natural feminine began in fact as a call to take an active role in your lives, in how you lived and how your lives unfolded. And in one way, You have been living through an adolescence in human evolution. First, you went through what we could call a childlike stage, wherein you accepted what was offered to you by life and the earth gladly, taking in all that you received with an awareness that it was given in love and asking for nothing that you did not receive. Then you took a step toward maturity by admitting to yourself that you wanted different and more than your mother was in her natural way of providing, than was natural and normal for her to provide. You struck out on your own to assert your independence, and you confronted her with a more intentional statement about who you are, and in the process you decided to take control of your lives. Now, just as an adolescent who has much passion and feels solidly in touch with his or her emerging will, you have lived through this period of the last 6 millennia with much success in regards to what you have set out to do. You really have, you know. You set out with a demand that you get to decide who you are and what you will experience, and you created a world based on that. Yet now, as your adolescence is coming to a close, you realize finally that all you have created thus far in this stage has been done because of anger and resentment towards your mother for how she did and did not treat you. And you realize that you do not, in fact, know all that you need to know. You are smart and in some ways resourceful, of course, like an adolescent who has played out his or her rebellious stage, and now you are ready to become humble again and learn more about the truth of things and yourselves, and how the universe, your mother, and your own free will work. You are ready to grow up into spiritual maturity, and you are beginning to do so. You are ready to begin working with your mother and the universe again, and release yourself from the need to feel that they are your enemies. The pendulum swing that you experienced in the direction of elevating the masculine, which diminished the feminine, was therefore a necessary part of your learning journey to gain insight and experience into who you really are and how things in life really work. All that is remembering its true nature through you, and you are evolving perfectly. The tools of the elevation of the masculine and the simultaneous diminishment of the feminine are numerous. There was an introduction of specific sets of sexual mores that became social and religious law. They said that a woman's sexuality was to come under the control of a man or men, first her father, then her husband. The father would choose the husband, and so this was a way of introducing measures of control by him, and then ensuring that she would be controlled later in a matter of which he, the father, approved. One of these controls is marriage, which is a mechanism introduced to ensure that a man knows who his children are. Keep in mind that procreation takes place entirely within a woman's body, and that if she and her body are not brought under control by a man or men focused on and committed to the social mores and laws, there is no telling, the thinking goes, who is the father of the child. I will get into this in more detail below, but I want you to see now how the control over a woman's body became necessary to the agenda of diminishing the feminine because she could not be allowed to be free sexually, which is to say, conceive of herself and behave in natural ways. Because if not, a man she was with could not know with certainty if her children are in fact his. In order to ensure that this social and economic control became rooted deeply, much about women's natural sexuality had to be brought under control, and in that process it had to be shamed so that women would be in some way willing to submit to the control of the man and his ideas of her nature and her body, how they are and how they should be. The shaming of natural sexuality has such far-reaching effects on your planet and in your lives. We will step into this topic deeply below, but for now understand that the pain that you are carrying about how your sexual selves have been unfolding over the course of these millennia is rooted in the collective need to learn about itself through the imbalance between masculine and feminine. Know for now that there is healing waiting for you, and that you are ready to create this healing for yourself on all levels. Again, I wish to put your attention on why you have created these dynamics. It has been important for you to learn about yourselves at certain times in your history through refusing natural laws and insisting on being in control of things, even if you do not have all the information you need in order to do it well, because your free will is so important to each stage of your learning journey. This learning has served you well, even as you have learned that you cannot overpower nature within yourselves, no matter how hard you try, or how hard you work to overpower nature outside yourself. Well, not really anyway. It has served you well, even as you have injured yourselves and each other along the way. You have attempted to overpower your true nature, and it has been important for you to try. But you are now in the process of seeing the pendulum come to swing the other way. You are now seeing the effects of having attempted to force on yourself an unnatural conception of who you are. As you have done this, you have watched yourselves and each other suffer, and in fact writhe under the pressure to conform to these ideas and conceptions. You have said that you are supposed to be one way, that you are not, and you have worked so incredibly hard to try to make it come true. You have struggled to make the social and religious conception of yourselves true, but it cannot come true. It simply cannot. It is time that you stop yourself in your tracks and choose to be honest with yourself about who you really are. I keep telling you that you are remembering your true natures more and on deeper levels, and an integral part of this process is that you learn to rebalance how you conceive of, live with, and embody the feminine. In all the ways you have lived into and through this imbalance over the last 6 millennia, you may find as you explore this material that you might have some blind spots about where it shows up in your living and where it is supposed to show up. Keep in mind that you have been conditioned over all these many years in severe and clear ways, living a variety of human lives spread out along the Earth timeline with the intention of experiencing life themes, including the elevation of the masculine and the simultaneous diminishment of the feminine from different perspectives. All of these different lives associated with your soul are taking place in different time places and the many different ways that various cultures all go through the time-space continuum, have dealt with issues surrounding the balance of masculine and feminine, are all available now to you as soul. And they are all teaching you as soul what you, as all that is, needs to learn about how the situation and how your choices relate to it affect you as individuals as well as all that is. All of the feelings that you have now about the imbalance, about the diminishment of the natural feminine, reflect memories from your soul's other lives. Each issue that you are energetically, which is to say emotionally, dealing with now regarding this topic, including how you treat your body and the earth and how you experience yourself as a sexual being, are in common to all of your soul's lives. All of you are experiencing this diminishment across time, as it is such an incredibly important exercise for all that is to go through. Many of you are living lives that center on exploring these issues in some way. Now you are healing, and you are invited to gain and take in this bird's eye view I offer you in order to support that healing. Now you are ready to surrender your identities as oppressed and oppressor, dominator and submissive, and rapist and rape victim. And that is what I ask you to do. Surrender your identities. All of them. Every single one of them. Make peace with these truths of why you have created these dynamics that have caused you so much pain, and take responsibility for this incredibly rich and complex learning journey that you are traveling, that you have set out for yourselves, and have lived. Let us explore the natural feminine and this notion of control some more. As I have said, It is what cannot be controlled. It seeks to be and to feel, and is not interested in doing in quite the same way or to the same degree as the natural masculine. In your efforts to get more in touch with your true natures as divine creators, you sought to introduce control mechanisms of all kinds in all parts of life. Below, I will discuss how you treat your bodies and how you have come to conceive of your natures as sexual beings, among other areas where this control of the natural energy within and around you has come into play. For now, I would like to discuss this matter of control relative to the natural feminine generally. At one point, it became too painful for you to bear to experience yourselves as extensions of nature, as part of it, and living in harmony with it. You underwent a great and deep heartbreak when, after you decided that you were the apex of the development of life on Earth, you still could not protect yourselves from the suffering. You threw out your ideas of the Earth as your mother, and you decided in a fit of rebellion, which, as an application of anger, is of course rooted in pain, to set out to show your mother who was really in charge. You needed to shake your fist at her as a collective and demand respect, telling her that you were wonderful beings and do not deserve to suffer. The elevation of the masculine and the simultaneous diminishment of the feminine was therefore, in an important way, a reaction against pain and an attempt to prevent further suffering by continuing to trust nature. Or to be more precise, it was a statement by you that you would no longer stand by and let nature force you to suffer any longer. You would take charge of your lives and your world, and you would make decisions for yourself. Where you found natural law in place, you made the decision that it was inappropriate and unacceptable, and you created human laws to replace them. As your social foundations had, to that point, been built on striving to live in harmony with nature, this meant that everything about your way of life needed to be amended in order to complete and follow through on the statement that you would not stand by any longer and let nature hurt you in any way it pleased. It started to seem to you that nature was trying to hurt you, as otherwise, you thought, all of this suffering through natural disaster and disease would not unfold. Part of this story is that you decided that you were the apex of evolution. Your active selves, creative fashioning of the world around you, and the redefinition of what was your true nature were masculine in nature. You then put the face of your new conception of self on divinity, which is to say you created male gods in order to have a guiding framework for your action-oriented attitudes and behaviors that could be appealed to as divine law. You created a context for this idea of who you were. In other words, by creating and choosing to worship male gods. Footnote. Some male gods had been present in previous mythic and religious pantheons, of course, but they, during this shift, became elevated in importance and took over what had previously been the domains of some goddesses. Tracing these shifts on your own will reveal to you an incredibly rich and revealing but almost secret history of what you term the patriarchy. End of footnote. You decided that these gods acted upon you, and when you suffered, it must have to do with your relationship with these gods. You decided that your level of suffering was a direct result of how well you were holding up your end of relationships and the contracts with these gods. Because you would punish others in your particular masculine mindset when they made you unhappy or did not do what you wanted them to do, that is precisely what you created this or that god to be doing when humans seem forced to suffer. This is quite a dramatic difference from the way it had been, and it, of course, did not unfold overnight. It took many generations. But it did happen, and it took a deep hold and remains with you today as you struggle to understand what you have created and how you can leave the unhealthy and unneeded parts of it behind. You must, in fact, decide what it is about the old ways of being that you need. As you begin to sort out what identities you will leave behind when it comes to being victimized, you will find that there exists parts of you that perceive that they need to feel as though victims. You will have to work through this in careful, conscious ways, becoming present to who you really are and choosing to move ahead into inhabiting yourself fully as the divine being that you are. This version of you needs no identities and certainly does not feel a need to retain the idea that you have been victimized by all that you have created. Nature and the earth could no longer be accepted as the divine. You could no longer, with your new conceptions of self and the hierarchy of nature you developed, with you at the top, except for your masculine-oriented gods, who treat you as poorly as you treat yourselves and each other, except that you are a being in nature like all other beings. You decided that you were better. You spent a great deal of time defining your greatness and spelling out why other beings were not as good as you, or not as important, as worthy of being elevated and revered, and even of receiving basic levels of respect. What a divorce from nature you created. This led to using other beings, and indeed other humans, who did not fit your conception of this self-generated face of God. In fact, each group of humans who created or moved to worshiping a male god put their own face on it, and so there were different skin colors and cultural attitudes that these gods possessed. It was easy for one group of people with their own god to devalue another group of people with their own god because that god was different, and therefore not the real God. This situation on your planet now that you are writhing in agony about at this time as you heal your past and decondition from the millennia of making decisions about who you really are, instead of looking within and accepting the truth of who you really are, can be described in simple terms. It is a split of your own selves based in a misunderstanding about the nature of pain and suffering, and who deserves to experience them and who does not or should not. That is it. It is that simple. When you defend yourselves as part of it and strove to live in harmony with its cycles and rhythms, feeling at the mercy of nature left you confused about why you have to experience pain. Note that there was a transition from feeling a part of nature to seeing yourselves as at the mercy of it. You looked at the scheme of things and decided that you should not have to be or feel at the mercy of nature and her whims. You decided that the pain you had experienced as you previously went about your lives trusting the earth and the goddess, you were clear they were the same. To love and protect you was evidence that she in fact did not love you. You said, "This treatment is not love. We know what love is, and this forcing us to suffer without reason and in ways that dishonor us is not love." However, you based all of this thinking, feeling, and living on what turns out to be an erroneous thought. Your logic seemed sound at the time, but you were not in possession of key facts about who you really are and what is really going on in the earth dimension, that you are divine beings incarnating here in a series of lives in order to learn how that works and what it feels like. The erroneous thought is that you are somehow different than the rest of nature and the other beings who live on your planet, and that you are deserving of being elevated because you can use language in a certain way, use tools in a certain way, and because you have, for example, unique human traits such as opposable thumbs. In truth, it is actually just one way of considering who you are. Over vast stretches of time, you have played with many different ideas, and this is just one more.